Hi there, and welcome to my presentation, which is Consumer Validation, Trials and Tribulations. So my name is Karis, and I'm from Ayton Global Research, and we are a consumer research company. So there's lots of ways you can validate claims, and consumer research is one of those. So I'll be really talking today about why you can use consumer research and how successful it can be, but also the things that can trip you up, so things to be really conscious of. So just to go for the agenda of today, I'll give you a summary of consumer research. Some of you may have used it before, some of you may not have ever used it. So we'll kind of give you an overview there in case it's something you're thinking of doing. I'll talk about deciding your research objectives. So what's the kind of best way to basically make your research to make sure that you're making the objectives that are going to be really, really clear, because they're going to lead you through your whole research process. So we'll be talking about choosing the best methodology, selecting the right panel, what are the best test conditions that are appropriate with your research objectives, things like your questionnaire design and presentation of results. And I've got a really good case study for one of our clients that basically I'll take you through all those steps as we go through, because I think that's always the best way of like visually representing, what the kind of best process is there. So yeah, we'll definitely go through that, and hopefully I'll give you guys a really good overview of what we'll be doing with consumer research. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the regulatory director. This basically means that I focus on regulations that have anything to do with cosmetic claims, with advertising regulations, to make sure the consumer research we conduct is going to be appropriate for the markets that you're launching it into, and that your adverts are going to be compliant with the data that you're using as well. So yeah, I'm really focused on just the regulation side. So you can always reach out to me if you've got any questions with that kind of thing. So to summarize what consumer research is, as I said, for those of you who may not have used it before, so consumer studies can also be known as in-use tests. So essentially we're testing a product on human beings, but whereas clinical research might be in a laboratory setting with a professional like a dermatologist applying the product, with consumer studies, the consumer's using the product. So we're reflecting the actual conditions of the product in use. It's a really good way of assessing exactly how your consumers will be using your product if they were to purchase it on the shelves or online. We're really replicating what that is in the consumer study. So the data you get for your claims is very valid because it's really based on the opinions of people when they're using that product as they usually would. So obviously there's a place for both types of research. As I've put here, for some claims you may need additional research because obviously if we're talking about wrinkles or something like that, a consumer can say that they, appear diminished, but we wouldn't be able to say the percentage that the wrinkles were reduced by, because you can't really expect a consumer to be able to kind of measure that sort of thing. So you need an instrumental study as well. So usually they're conducted in home. So this allows us to conduct research globally as well, because as long as we can send products somewhere and someone can answer a long online questionnaire about it on their own computer or device, it means that we can test the product there. It also helps with things like gathering undesirable event data. So if you want to look at the actual conditions of the product in use for undesirable events, instead of just kind of looking at your safety test, you get an idea of what it's like on a bigger scale. So if we did a consumer study of 100 people and you had one undesirable event, it would give you an idea on that larger scale. If you were to kind of scale that up and sell 1,000 products, 2,000 products, how many people might kind of have those undesirable events occur. Skip too much. As well as claim substantiation, there are some other reasons you really want to think about consumer research and things I really want to touch on today, because when we're going to be talking about writing up your research objectives and thinking what they are, it's not just about saying, okay, these are the claims I want to substantiate and that's what I want to get from it. The best thing about consumer research is because we're asking those people their opinions and asking them to use it in their own homes, we can gather some really fantastic marketing material that goes above and beyond just kind of the claims themselves. So it's something that you can really put into your new product development. You can really get people to assess whether they like the product, what they don't like about the product, what they love about the product, and put that into your product development cycle. So it's not always just thinking about this final product being tested and going straight to market. It might be something that you want to develop over time. So this can really help when investigating new markets as well, because if you're looking at, say you have got a successful product launched in the UK, but you want to launch it into China, It means you can assess the consumer's kind of acceptance of your product before you even have to launch it there. So you're saving yourself a bit of kind of risk of expenditure, really, when setting up logistics and things like that. Because if people don't like it, or you need to redesign the way you're marketing the product, you can assess that before you go there. So also we're looking at kind of benchmark testing for things like formulation and against competitors. Again, that can be really good for launching in new markets because you can see where you sit within that new market. But also with reformulation. So again, if you've got a product that maybe you need to change the formulation for a new market, or you need to change it because you have a new supplier, so the fragrance has to change slightly, you can get people to assess the new formulation and see if it still is accepted. It also means if you have different suppliers, you want to test their different formulations, you can do that as well and establish a winner. You can also gain other marketing material such as testimonials and reviews, photos and videos, because it will help you really kind of launch your whole campaign of your product. So if you had things like video reviews that you'd got throughout the consumer study, you could put them on things like your Instagram or your TikTok to really show people using the product and loving it. And it can really help elevate your marketing to something just beyond having those written claims. So the kind of claims that we might be looking at are always to do with perception. So as we've got here, like people agree their wrinkles appear reduced. I kind of mentioned about wrinkles earlier, because obviously it needs to be something they can notice rather than something they can measure. We've got things like marketing claims. So 9 out of 10 people would recommend this product to other families. So, things like I would buy this product, recommend this product. That's all stuff that you can only get through a consumer study. And things like 96% of people agree that this product is suitable for their child-sensitive skin. So we're able to conduct studies on all different kinds of ages for families, things like that. So you can get some really good kind of claims that really help with the acceptability of the product on a range of people. So the first thing we need to do when we're looking at conducting a consumer research study to make sure it's really successful is to establish the research objectives. So when we're thinking about research objectives, I've basically made this list of questions, which is what these are the questions that I would ask my client or I would ask myself if I was designing the research objectives. And I think it's a really good guide to sort of go, okay, once you've asked these questions, you can kind of formulate what those are. So the main thing is, what are the main benefits your product provides? So obviously every cosmetic has got a kind of list of ingredients. It's been formulated to be able to have a benefit that it can produce and that the consumers can perceive. And that's what we need to start with. I know that sounds really, really obvious, but I've had it before where I have people like, I've made a lipstick, I want to test it. Can you let me know what the questionnaire should be for this product? But really, it needs to come from you and what why that product was formulated. Is it because the color's really vibrant? Is it because it's long lasting? Is it because it really hydrates the lips? It's all things you need to think about, because if I kind of make it up for you, it's not going to be fair on your product because it hasn't been formulated in the way that I kind of, would imagine it has been. It needs to kind of all come from that formulation. Then once you've got all of your benefits, you want to think about what the key claims are that you're looking to substantiate. This is because a product can have lots and lots of different benefits. But really, when you put your product out to market, it can be overwhelming for a consumer, either within a study or in your actual marketing material. If there's got about 40 different benefits to the product, it makes you question what's actually verified, what's valid, and what you're actually going to get out of this product that you wouldn't get from other ones. So really think about the key claims. What is it that makes your product stand out from the crowd? And what is the best thing about your product rather than everything it's been formulated to do? Think about what countries are your main markets. So this is really important when we're thinking about where to conduct the consumer research study. If you conducted the study in the UK, on a UK demographic panel, but then decided you wanted to launch the product in China, well, there won't be a huge amount of Chinese people on the UK demographic panel, but also there's going to be different cultural aspects in terms of actually the acceptance of the product, and there's going to be a different climate and ambient temperature and everything like that. So the claims aren't going to reflect that market that you're launching into. This can be a real issue with advertising legislation, as well as obviously just making sure it's the most valid data for your right consumer. It might not even be accepted in another country if it hasn't been conducted there. So I'm not expecting, if you're a global company, to conduct your research in every single country, because that would be crazy. But what we can do is reflect the main markets with maybe a few countries there. So when should the benefits be perceived by the consumer? This again drives our study duration. So instead of kind of asking us again what the study duration should be, it really depends on what you're expecting your product to be able to achieve. So this can range from anything from, say, for example, a mascara study, we might run for a couple of weeks to see how it's accepted, kind of introducing it every day for a couple of weeks. But for a supplement study, it could be 6 months because they're ingesting the product. So we want to make sure that they're able to use it for a longer amount of time so they can really see the benefits. What other marketing claims can you make? So anything that is kind of mentioned before, would you buy this product? Would you recommend this product? If you can think about that before running the study, what kind of things you want to put into your marketing, it can make sure we can really design the study and the questionnaire to encompass that, as well as any other marketing materials, such as those kinds of photos, videos, testimonials, all those things we kind of looked at earlier. And a huge thing is, who are your key consumers? So when we recruit for a study, we are pretty unlimited who we can recruit. We've got a panel of over 600,000 volunteers worldwide. But what we really need to know is, who do you want on your study? Who are you going to sell this product to? So as well as thinking about those countries, what are the age ranges? What are the genders? What do they need to use some kind of products already? Do you want them to shop in a certain store? All of these things are really important to think about at this stage, at the research objective stage, because it will really encompass how we design everything else. So I just want to touch on finding the best claim, because as I said earlier, you've got your benefits, but then you want to find out your key claims. So there's some things you can really think about to make sure you design the best claims. So the most important thing is finding a relevant claim, as I kind of mentioned before. It needs to be relevant to the product performance and your consumer need. They're kind of the wheel that goes around when you're deciding what your relevant claim is. So make sure you explore your target group and really understand what is relevant to them. So you can do that by conducting a market research study on your key consumers. You can ask your own customers. We can do kind of product experiences, so things that you've already noted with previous product launches, and comparisons with competitors. So there's lots of things you can look at there to make sure you get the claim that's relevant to them. Checking your competitors is also a really great way to find the relevant claims as well, in terms of the successes and failures. So we see a lot of trends in the beauty industry in particular for big claims that are being really successful with consumers at that time. That's a great thing to do. But also look at the failures that have happened, particularly if you're launching into another country. Always check the advertising standards of that country and see what's been withdrawn. See what kind of people have said about companies coming in and maybe having a claim they didn't like. It's a really good way to look at it and kind of find out what's not worked as well as what's worked, because you might think you've got the best claim in the world, but maybe someone's really done it and it hasn't gone so well. It should also be a kind of multifunctional task. So we've kind of got this big wheel again, which is all things to think about when you're developing a claim that is strong, essentially. So you need to think about what's in it for your consumer. Why do they want to use your product? What are they going to get out of it they don't kind of get from any other product? What can you actually deliver? Because again, that's all very well and good to say, but if you can't deliver it, you need to start again. Does it support your brand and your marketing strategy? So if you have a brand story, maybe you're a brand that is all about kind of making really sustainable products. Does that kind of fit in with that as well? Can you do what your consumer wants and be able to deliver it? And does it fit in with your strategy? Can it be implemented? So again, is it something that you can actually support? Can you set up the logistics to sell in China if that's where you really want to launch? And of course, can it be legally supported or validated? So can you get the evidence behind the claim, which of course is one of the reasons we would conduct consumer research. So I'm going to kind of introduce our case study now, because we've talked about how we decide our research objectives and our claims, and this is how we implemented it from one of our clients. So the client I'm going to talk about is Temple Spa, who are a kind of UK luxury holistic cosmetic brand. So they've had a recent product launch for their Truffle Delight, which is a skin, like a face moisturizer. So they wanted to, their main research objectives overall is to test the product efficacy and substantiate advertising claims in the UK. So we've got our market there. They also want to gain testimonials to use in their marketing. And in particular, the claims they want to do they want to substantiate the claims whilst proving it's also suitable for oily skin types. So I'll go through the claims in more detail, but that's kind of the overall thing. They wanted to make sure it's really suitable for those oily skin types. So the method we decided for this one is an in-home user study, which I've already kind of touched on. The country was just the UK. That's where they're starting off with their marketing campaign. It might be something that later on we look at introducing new markets, but for now, it's a really clear start with the UK. The study duration was 28 days. So that's what we mentioned before about the benefits of the product. That's when we know they're going to be perceived. So it's 28 days. Then we also have to think about the questionnaire time points. So we can make sure that we get the claims assessed at the right times. So we've got after first use, which is going to be sort of your kind of initial claims, kind of instant reactions. And then we've got after 4 weeks, which is going to assess those benefits after the product's been used for a few weeks. So the next thing we want to do is think about our panel. So we've talked about kind of what's our key consumer, but a really important thing to note is about the significance of your panel size. So there's kind of some information that we need to think about before we can decide our panel size. And the most important thing to think about is that because there's such a varying nature of all claims and all supporting data and all products, there is no recommended set panel size from any advertising standards. So when you kind of say, oh, is it different countries? There are a certain amount of panel responses in our panel we need to think about. Well, actually, there's nothing set. So it's really important just to think about every single project as its own kind of thing. So the most important thing is we need to make sure that it needs to be large enough to have statistically significant results. Obviously, the smaller the panel, the less significant it is. So generally, we want to think about using as big a panel as we possibly can. So we also want to use a representative panel and avoid making a claim about the general population if you're not using a representative panel. So this is a really important thing to think about because at the moment, we see a lot of claims which say 99% of people agree that blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're saying that, you're suggesting that you've got all ages, all ethnicities, all genders, because you've said of people. If you say that, you need to have that kind of data behind your claim. Otherwise, you need to be really, really clear about what that subgroup of people is that you have investigated, which is fine. As I've mentioned, if that's your key consumer, if you know your key consumer is a certain subgroup of people, you can conduct your consumer research on that subgroup, but you cannot then make a claim to say it's kind of been tested on the general population. It's something that people are cracking down on in terms of advertising standards. So please do be wary and always use an inclusive panel or make it very clear if you're not. So the panel in our case study, we had 70% of female and 30% of male because that's who they knew as their key consumer. It's a nice wide age range of 35 to 65. It's kind of got anti-aging properties in the product. So we wanted to make sure we had people that were going to have aging problems in their skin. So we had 50% with the UK demographic, so kind of a split of different ethnicities that are usual in the UK, but a real focus on 50% from Asian ethnicity because they wanted to be able to assess their product on Asian skin because they know that's going to be their next step after testing in the UK in terms of where they're going to launch the product. We had to have all skin types as well, including sensitive, because we want to make sure we're reflecting all of the skin types. The test conditions are the next thing we need to think about. So this really is looking at how frequently they're using the product. So in this case, every day for the 4-week study. How they actually use the product. So this should come straight from your usage directions. That is another trip up that can happen if you're not kind of careful when you're conducting consumer research, is if you don't kind of use the usage directions exactly as they are that you're expecting to sell them with. So in this case, obviously, it's about after cleansing and toning. You dot it onto the face and neck and massage and circular upward motions. That's exactly how they're going to use the product. That's exactly how they're going to be told to use it when they buy it. So we know the claims are really going to reflect that. You have to be really clear about the application areas, and you also need to include restrictions for use. So this is usually the safety instructions that you'd be including on your packaging as well. So the next thing we do is design the questionnaire. So this is really important to get right and do with your research objectives and your claims. So it really has to go in this process, because there's no point in designing a questionnaire until you're completely happy with how the study is designed, who you're going to have on that study, what are the claims we're trying to substantiate, everything like that. Obviously, every questionnaire design is different. So I've just included some really kind of important rules for kind of good questionnaire design practice. So always be consistent and use appropriate answer groups. So usually for claim substantiation, we're kind of doing a statement. So it might be something along the lines of my wrinkles appear reduced. And then we're putting on a 1 to 9 scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. So always use appropriate questions. Don't go off piste and start asking things that aren't appropriate to your study and that aren't appropriate to your product. It can be off-putting to the volunteers, but also you're not going to get very valid or very usable data. So try and keep it very, very kind of on target with what your research objectives are. Be very, very clear. So don't kind of go into loads of technical jargon. Keep it very, very clear statements and use present tense because it makes it clear that that's what the product was doing at that time. Always include free text answers, so it gives you that really good feedback. I've had it before where a product was rated really, really badly, but because we included a free text answer at the end, we found out it's because they didn't like the fragrance of the product. So really important for that product development, because we know that the product probably didn't perform so badly, but because people didn't like the fragrance, it was so off-put, they rated everything really, really badly. That gave the brand to go away, redevelop the product with a new fragrance, and then test it again and get some really good results. Wording should always match the claim verbatim. So you literally want to be able to lift it up. So as I said, if you say, my wrinkles appear reduced, you can then lift that claim straight up and into your marketing, because you can say so many percentage of people agree their wrinkles are reduced. What to think about a kind of not to do when you're doing questionnaire design. And I've taken this straight from the Market Research Society, because they've done some excellent research to find out what kind of is the biggest negative impacts for questionnaire design. So excessively lengthy questionnaires are not going to be very good. You're going to get a kind of dip off of attention as the volunteers answer it. So if you've got these really key claims, ask them first, and then kind of you can allow for people to dip off, but also don't keep asking them the same questions. So no repetitive questioning. This is a really important thing with time points. So in this example of the case study, as I mentioned, we had a first use and after 4 weeks. That's really important because if we had a 2 week or 3 week, but we're asking the same questions, but we actually knew the product wasn't going to have an effect until the 4th week, we're just annoying the volunteers for kind of no reason, to be honest. It's also important that we have a sufficient opportunity for respondents to have their say. So if you kind of say, I don't know, which brand do you use, Estee Lauder or Yves Saint Laurent, we need to make sure that there's an option to say neither, because otherwise we're going to get some really invalid data. We need to make sure there's no excessive classification section. So if you want to find out about your key consumer and if they like your lipstick, we don't want to find out all of this other information about what they had for tea and all of that kind of thing, which might sound really straightforward. But again, you'd be surprised. Lots of people want to get as much data as they can, but it can actually be very off-putting for your participants. So once we've got our questionnaire designed, we can conduct the study and we can get some really great results back. So this is our case study again. This table has come straight from our report. So we've got a summary of the results at the end. Again, we've got our statement, which is our claim, the number of people that were satisfied or had a neutral answer or a not satisfied answer, and then the percentage of people that had a satisfied, neutral, or not satisfied answer. So this is the best thing, as I said, to lift it straight into your marketing. So, for example, with the first one, you can say that 95% of 114 people felt that their skin was instantly moisturized. So that can take straight into your marketing there. Then we've got the other claims there as well. So about skin feeling smooth, skin feeling hydrated, having a healthy looking radiant glow. You can see the percentage of people, there's a little asterisk by all of them because they've passed their pass mark, but also they are really, really high percentage agreements. So it's really going to look good when we go into the marketing for this product. And I'll show you that now. So this has gone straight on to Temple Spa's website. So they had the testimonials as well as their percentage agreements. So as you can see in the kind of italic writing, they've got the testimonials that have come from the study. So it gave my skin a lovely radiant glow that made me feel confident to go makeup free. Or it worked amazingly well on my combination skin and it was left feeling soft, smooth, hydrated and balanced. So fantastic testimonials. And because the overall data of the study has done well and they've passed their other claims, we can also use these testimonials. So we've got all of the like high percentages that I've mentioned there on the report that are on their website as well. And we've got the based on the panel side of 112 there as well. So it's clear where how many people have tested the product. We've also got their claims on social media. So on Instagram and on Facebook. So you can see how lovely it looks in their kind of marketing and how it really speaks to their consumer as well. To have these percentage claims really, really clearly splashed across everywhere. I think the saddest thing for me is with we're talking about kind of consumer studies tribulations. Don't kind of get all this amazing data and don't put it into your marketing, because it's not just about ticking a box and saying, okay, I've got the data behind my claim. Make sure to really show off how amazing your product is and get it out there. So to summarize today's lecture, the main thing to think about is making sure you have these clear research objectives. They will guide you through the entire process of a consumer research study. Everything from there will kind of help it all go smoothly. But if you don't have really clear research objectives and don't have a really good idea of what you want to get out of this data, everything else can get tripped up. So a well-designed study and questionnaire is essential for valuable data. So obviously, again, take advice from any of your testing houses and make sure that you really do have the design in place there and don't kind of wing it or rush it, because it can really upset how valuable your data is. You need to make sure your data is compliant in the country you are selling the product. So again, think about those key markets you're looking at. Always present your evidence clearly in advertising to avoid scrutiny. I touched on this earlier when I said about making sure your general population kind of claims, you don't kind of include those if you don't have that very clearly in your advertising. But the more information you put into your claims and your advertising, the better. So avoid scrutiny. You're less likely to get chased by advertising authorities if you've got it very, very clearly there. And always use recent evidence in your advertising. So if it's something, you're a brand and you know that your evidence is maybe dating back a few years now, make sure you can refresh that evidence for your advertising as well. So that is my lecture for today. Thank you very much for listening. I'll put my contact information up there. And I'm really happy to take some questions now as well.